Take a look at your phone. Right now, you could probably watch your food delivery driver make every turn on the way to your house, down to the exact street, the exact second. We live in a world where almost everything can be tracked. Now zoom out. Thousands of satellites orbit Earth every single day. Commercial airliners cross the Atlantic. Cargo ships cross the Pacific. Almost every aircraft, almost every ship is constantly telling someone exactly where it is. We've convinced ourselves there's nowhere left to disappear, and that's exactly why this next part is so unsettling. Because in the middle of all that technology, there's a stretch of ocean covering nearly 500,000 square miles, where planes and ships have crossed an invisible line and simply vanished. No distress call, no signal. Sometimes, not even wreckage. Imagine sitting in the cockpit of a modern aircraft. Multiple navigation systems, backup instruments, 2 engines designed to keep flying even after serious failures. It's one of the safest places you could possibly be. Until it isn't. Without warning, your instruments begin freezing. The compass no longer agrees with itself. Outside the windshield, the horizon disappears into a wall of white. Within seconds, you're flying blind. No reliable heading, no clear altitude, no idea which direction leads home. Back on the ground, air traffic controllers watch your radar target flicker, pause, and disappear. No emergency call, no final message, just gone. That's what makes these disappearances so unsettling. Not explosions, not giant waves, just silence. As if the ocean quietly erased every trace that you were ever there. Welcome to the one place that's challenged sailors, pilots, scientists, and storytellers for more than a century, the Bermuda Triangle. December 5th, 1945. For many people, this is the day the Bermuda Triangle stopped being local folklore and became an international mystery. 5 U.S. Navy bombers take off from Fort Lauderdale on what should have been a routine training flight. The mission is called Flight 19. Leading the formation is Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a combat veteran with more than 2,500 hours in the cockpit. The weather couldn't have looked better. Blue skies, calm water. Nothing suggested that anything was about to go wrong. Then, everything changed. A strange blanket of haze began forming over the ocean. No thunderstorm, no towering clouds, just an endless wall of white swallowing the horizon. Soon after, the radio calls began. Taylor reported something every pilot dreads hearing. Both of his magnetic compasses were giving conflicting readings. Neither one made sense. And if you can't trust your compass over open water, you're already in serious trouble. Then came one of the most famous radio transmissions in aviation history. Both my compasses are out. Everything looks strange. Even the ocean doesn't look the way it should. Those aren't the words of an inexperienced pilot. They're the words of someone suddenly realizing the world around him no longer makes sense. Taylor became convinced he was flying over the Florida Keys. He wasn't. Evidence suggests he was actually over the Bahamas, moving farther out into the Atlantic. Believing he needed to head north, he unknowingly led the entire squadron farther away from land. As daylight faded, their fuel disappeared with it. By 6:20 that evening, all 14 men were gone. None of them were ever found. The Navy responded immediately. A PBM Mariner rescue aircraft, carrying 13 crew members, was dispatched to search for Flight 19. It never made it home, just 23 minutes after takeoff. The rescue plane disappeared too. A nearby merchant ship reported seeing a bright flash on the horizon. Then, nothing. No distress call, no confirmed wreckage. The Navy searched more than 380,000 square miles of ocean. Nothing they found could explain what happened to Flight 19. 6 aircraft, 27 servicemen, gone in a single afternoon. The Navy spent months investigating every possibility. In the end, the official conclusion was brutally simple. Cause unknown. Disappearance unexplained. And that's where the case has remained ever since. Aircraft weren't the only things disappearing here. Long before modern aviation, enormous ships were vanishing in these same waters. One of the most famous cases happened in March of 1918. The USS Cyclops left Barbados carrying military cargo on its way to Baltimore. It never arrived. The Cyclops wasn't some small fishing boat. It stretched more than 540 feet long, carried over 10,000 tons of manganese ore, and had 306 people on board. No major storm crossed its route. No distress signal was ever received. One day it was there. The next, it simply wasn't. The disappearance stunned the Navy. Searches continued for years. No confirmed wreckage was ever found. No definitive explanation ever emerged. Even President Woodrow Wilson called it one of the most baffling mysteries in the history of the Navy. More than a century later, the USS Cyclops has still never been found. Fast forward, almost 100 years. October 2015, the cargo ship Faro entered waters east of the Bahamas. Unlike the ships of the early 20th century, this one had modern GPS, satellite communications. Advanced weather forecasting, technology its predecessors could only dream about. The bridge voice recorder captured the crew fighting to save the ship. The winds intensified, the waves kept building, the vessel developed a dangerous list. Then the recording stopped. That was the last anyone ever heard from them. All 33 people on board were lost. Investigators eventually located the wreck nearly 15,000 feet below the surface. The tragedy wasn't mysterious in the supernatural sense. The ship encountered a powerful hurricane, but it revealed something important. Even with today's technology, the ocean here can overwhelm systems, crews, and machines with frightening speed. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the biggest myth about the Bermuda Triangle may be the Bermuda Triangle itself. Before we look at the science, we need to separate decades of storytelling from what the evidence actually shows. Beginning in the 1970s, books and television specials transformed the triangle into something almost supernatural. Sea monsters, alien abductions, time portals. Most of those stories relied on selective reporting, exaggerated claims, or cases that happened hundreds of miles outside the triangle altogether. Meanwhile, organizations like Lloyd's of London, which has tracked maritime losses for centuries, found something surprising. Statistically, ships don't disappear here at unusually high rates compared to other heavily traveled parts of the ocean. So, does that mean the Bermuda Triangle is completely harmless? Not even close, because once you strip away the myths, what's left is something far more interesting, and in many ways, far more dangerous. The first piece of the puzzle isn't mysterious at all. It's invisible, natural, and it's been affecting navigators for centuries. It's called the agonic line. Normally, there's a difference between true north, the geographic North Pole, and magnetic north, the direction your compass points. Pilots constantly account for that difference when navigating. But along the agonic line, those two directions briefly line up. Your compass suddenly points almost exactly to true north. For pilots unfamiliar with the region, that unexpected change can look like an instrument failure. That's where human psychology takes over. Believing the compass is wrong, A pilot may correct a heading that was actually accurate. Every adjustment pushes the aircraft farther off course. Fuel slowly disappears. Land never appears. And by the time the mistake becomes obvious, there may be nowhere left to land. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the cockpit isn't a broken instrument. It's complete confidence that you're right. In 1970, private pilot Bruce Jernan described flying through what he later called an electronic fog. He reported entering a tunnel-like cloud formation unlike anything he had seen before. His navigation equipment began behaving erratically. Ground radar temporarily lost track of his aircraft. When he emerged, he had covered far more distance than he believed his flight time should have allowed. Scientists remain skeptical of some of Jernan's conclusions, but they do agree on one point. Powerful atmospheric conditions can generate intense electrical activity capable of interfering with onboard electronics. Sometimes, nature can create effects that feel almost impossible until science catches up and explains them. That brings us to one of the biggest questions in maritime history. How does a steel ship weighing tens of thousands of tons disappear without even sending a distress call? To answer that, we have to look beneath the surface, far beneath it. Under part of the Bermuda Triangle lies a region known as the Blake Ridge. It's home to one of the world's largest known deposits of methane hydrate. Think of it as methane gas trapped inside ice beneath the seafloor. Most of the time it stays exactly where it is, but if the seafloor shifts, even slightly, those frozen deposits can begin to break apart. Large amounts of methane may then rush upward through the water in enormous gas plumes. Here's why that matters. Ships float because water pushes them upward. But if enough gas mixes into the water, that upward force drops dramatically. Instead of solid water supporting the hull, you get a frothy mixture of water and gas. In theory, a ship caught directly above one of these eruptions could lose buoyancy almost instantly. There may be little or no time to react. The gas doesn't necessarily stop at the surface. Some researchers have suggested that a large methane release could also rise into the air. If a low-flying aircraft entered a dense enough plume, its engines could receive less oxygen than they need to operate efficiently. Whether that alone could bring down an aircraft remains highly debated. But it's one of several ideas scientists have explored over the years. It's important to separate possibility from proof. Scientists, including geochemist Richard McIver and researcher Joseph Monahan, have examined this hypothesis for decades. The methane deposits are real. The geology is real. The physics behind buoyancy loss is real. What has never been demonstrated is that a methane eruption directly caused any of the famous Bermuda Triangle disappearances. It's a plausible mechanism, not a proven answer. Even when investigators know where to search, this part of the Atlantic works against them. Near the Bahamas, the relatively shallow seafloor ends abruptly. It drops into the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, more than 5 miles down. Flowing across this region is the Gulf Stream, one of the fastest and most powerful ocean currents on Earth. It carries an astonishing amount of water northward every second. When powerful storms interact with that current, the ocean can become incredibly unpredictable. Wave energy builds, currents collide, and under the right conditions, rogue waves can appear seemingly out of nowhere. Walls of water towering 60, even 100 feet high. And if something sinks here, finding it becomes a race against time. The Gulf Stream begins carrying floating debris away almost immediately. Hours later, the wreckage may already be dozens of miles from where the accident happened. Anything that doesn't stay afloat continues falling. down the continental slope, into some of the deepest water on the planet. Long before search teams arrive, much of the evidence may already be gone. Now put all of those pieces together. A region where navigation can become confusing, where powerful weather develops quickly, where strong currents scatter evidence, and where some of the deepest water in the Atlantic makes recovery extraordinarily difficult. None of those hazards are supernatural, but together, they create an environment that can be remarkably unforgiving. There's something else worth remembering. The Bermuda Triangle isn't remote. It's one of the busiest stretches of ocean anywhere in the world. Commercial airlines, cargo ships, cruise ships, private aircraft, fishing boats. Thousands of journeys pass through these waters every year. With that much traffic, incidents are inevitable. That's one reason organizations like Lloyd's of London don't classify the Bermuda Triangle as unusually dangerous. Insurance data simply doesn't show an abnormal rate of losses compared with other heavily traveled parts of the world's oceans. Many famous disappearances eventually came down to familiar causes: navigation errors, mechanical failures, severe weather, human decisions made under pressure. The kinds of tragedies that happen anywhere people challenge the sea. So why does the legend refuse to die? Because mystery sells. Beginning in the 1970s, books and television specials stitched together decades of unrelated incidents into a single narrative. Cases with explanations were often presented without them. Details were exaggerated, facts were mixed with speculation. Over time, the legend became far more famous than the evidence behind it. But losing the myth doesn't make this place any less fascinating. If anything, it becomes more impressive. Because the real Bermuda Triangle isn't powered by aliens, or time portals, or sea monsters. It's powered by geology, weather, physics, and an ocean that has absolutely no interest in whether we're prepared for it. Sometimes, the scariest explanation is also the simplest. The sea does not reward those who are too anxious, too greedy, or too impatient. Anne Morrow Lindbergh. The ocean doesn't care what we believe. It doesn't care how advanced our technology becomes. Every aircraft, every ship, every expedition that has been lost here is a reminder of the same lesson. Nature doesn't have to be mysterious to be overwhelming. Maybe that's what the Bermuda Triangle has always represented. Not a place where the laws of physics stop working, but a place where we're reminded just how small we really are. If you enjoyed this deep dive, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're fascinated by the science behind Earth's most extraordinary places, consider subscribing. There are plenty more mysteries out there. The best part is, the real explanations are often even more incredible than the myths.